Nintendo has forgotten Mario.
Oh hey guys, it's Noah. Didn't see you there. I just got back from the cemetery. I was grieving for some great game franchises that Nintendo has sadly forgotten. You will be missed, Metroid Prime. Maybe one day I'll see you again. Some franchises will always be Nintendo staples, like Mario, Zelda, and Animal Crossing. But others don't do as well and get quietly forgotten. Forgotten by Nintendo, not the fans. Golden Sun fans won't shut the f*** up. And let me tell you, there are a lot more Nintendo franchises that have been forgotten than you might think. This rabbit hole goes deep. So let's take a look at some of the most interesting franchises that Nintendo has forgotten, and see why they might deserve to come back. Who the f*** is Tingle? Yeah, this is probably the most notorious example of a forgotten Nintendo franchise. F-Zero is a high-speed, futuristic racing series that started on the Super Nintendo in 1991. You pilot a machine and glide along the track, making sure to avoid hazards and other drivers while also maintaining your machine's energy bar. F-Zero games are really fun. They can be pretty tough, but that sort of makes them more immersive. Whenever I play an F-Zero game, I get sucked into its fast and intense gameplay. Obviously, since it's a Nintendo racing game, the closest thing to compare it to is Mario Kart. But F-Zero is way different than Mario Kart. A game of Mario Kart usually comes down to luck, with a little bit of skill, but F-Zero on the other hand is mostly about skill with only a tiny bit of luck involved. For that reason, I think F-Zero is way more fun to play by yourself than Mario Kart. The most recent game in the series was F-Zero 99 in 2023. F-Zero 99 plays just like the first F-Zero game, with the same tracks and graphics, but now you're racing online with 99 other players. Because F-Zero 99 is so similar to the original SNES game, it's hard for me to count this as an original game. It feels more like a ROM hack of the original F-Zero than something new. So, by that logic, the last original entry was in 2004 with F-Zero Climax on the Game Boy Advance, releasing only in Japan. Nintendo has claimed that they haven't made a new entry because they found it hard to innovate or evolve the series in new directions, but that hasn't stopped them from releasing a new Mario Kart every generation. The real reason is probably because the franchise was never a huge moneymaker. None of the games sold particularly well. The whole series sold a combined 5.8 million copies. That's not bad, but compare that to one of Nintendo's more successful franchises like Super Smash Bros., which has sold over 77 million copies. For an entire franchise, 5.8 million isn't that mind-blowing. Besides, at this point, Captain Falcon is more well known for his appearance in Smash Bros. Than he is from his own series. How sad is that? But even though these games weren't big sellers back in the day, Nintendo's smaller and more obscure franchises have been doing really well on the Switch. And I think there's demand for it too. One Nintendo fan bought thousands of dollars of stock in Nintendo so that he could attend a shareholders meeting and ask the president of Nintendo point blank why there hasn't been a new F-Zero game. Holy shit. Now that's what you call dedication. So yeah, I definitely think F-Zero deserves another chance. If you asked me about the state of the Kid Icarus franchise before Kid Icarus Uprising came out, I would scream in your face because I was a small child at the time. But if you asked me about the state of the Kid Icarus franchise now, I would scream in your face because they haven't made a sequel to Kid Icarus Uprising! Kid Icarus is a series of action games where you play as an angel named Pit. The first Kid Icarus game came out on the NES in 1986. In that game, you progress through 2D areas and shoot monsters with your bow. In that way, it's kinda similar to the original Metroid on NES, which makes sense because a lot of people that worked on Metroid also worked on this game. The goal is to collect 3 sacred treasures and save the goddess Palutena from Medusa. I like the original Kid Icarus fine enough. It's not one of my favorites, but it's not bad either. A sequel was released for the Game Boy in 1991 called Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters. Then, the series went silent. That was until 2008 with Super Smash Bros. Brawl. You see, it's sort of a tradition for the Smash series to add obscure and retro Nintendo characters as fighters, like the Ice Climbers in Melee for example. For Brawl, Smash creator Masahiro Sakurai chose Pit from Kid Icarus as a fighter. Pit's design was completely overhauled to look more like the other characters in that game. After Brawl was released, Sakurai was approached by Nintendo to make a launch title for the 3DS that took advantage of the system's 3D display. Sakurai decided to make a third-person shooter, and since Sakurai and his team redesigned Pit for Brawl, Sakurai decided to make it a Kid Icarus game. Sakurai himself has a really good video about the development of this game, which I'll link in the description. This game became Kid Icarus Uprising, which came out for the 3DS in 2012. And let me just say that this is one of my favorite games of all time. As I mentioned, Uprising is a third-person shooter. Unlike the previous games, Uprising focuses more on combat rather than platforming. The combat is so good that the game had an online PvP mode in the same vein as Counter-Strike or Team Fortress. What the f***? You play as Pit once again, fighting against Medusa once again. You progress through several story missions, with some sections taking place in the air as rail shooter segments, while others take place on the ground with an emphasis on melee combat. Now, one of the main issues with Uprising is that it has a very uncomfortable control scheme. You move Pit with the left stick, aim with the stylus, and shoot with the L button, so the game would ordinarily be played like this. That can be very straining on your hands, especially if you have a bigger 3DS. The game came packaged with a stand to rest your 3DS on, which helps make the controls a bit more comfortable, but it doesn't make this game any more convenient to play. Other than the control scheme though, I genuinely think Uprising is a masterpiece. The story and the writing are so clever, the gameplay is really fun, the visuals are beautiful, and the soundtrack is incredible. You really do need to play this game. I love Uprising so much, and I'm really sad that the Kid Icarus franchise got left in the dust. Mr. Sakurai, if you're watching this video, cancel Smash 6, you need to make another Kid Icarus game. Chibi-Robo, look out! Chibi-Robo is a 3D platformer and collectathon series. You go around people's homes doing tasks that will make your owners happy, like cleaning up messes or helping out other toys. The original Chibi-Robo was released on the GameCube in 2006. The latest entry in the series was Chibi-Robo Ziplash on the 3DS back in 2015. Wow, Chibi-Robo Ziplash was a decade ago? Ziplash has become notorious among Nintendo YouTubers for being terrible. Ziplash completely forgoes the gameplay of the original Chibi-Robo games, and instead is a 2D platformer. A 2D platformer with annoying controls and dumb mechanics on a system that already had a bunch of 2D platformers. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this game. The original Chibi-Robo, on the other hand, is fantastic. The gameplay loop of doing little tasks and exploring the house is extremely satisfying. It's kind of relaxing to clean up stains and pick up trash. Kind of like how doing chores in Animal Crossing is fun. And the game radiates charm. I mean, who doesn't like this little dude? The original Chibi-Robo is such an underrated game. So, what happened? Long story short, Chibi-Robo was forgotten due to extremely low sales. Like, if you thought F-Zero had low sales, well, I hope you're sitting for this one. The original Chibi-Robo sold less than 400,000 copies across the entire world. Damn. There are almost as many people that clicked on this fucking video than people who bought Chibi-Robo. But the story goes a lot deeper than just poor sales. Each Chibi-Robo game has its own reason for selling poorly. The first Chibi-Robo game was released on the GameCube just a couple months before the Wii came out and completely overshadowed the GameCube. Chibi-Robo Park Patrol was only available at Walmart for some reason. Okairi Chibi-Robo Happy Richi Osoji only released in Japan. No f***ing way, I would have never guessed. Chibi-Robo Photo Finder was just a little downloadable 3DS game. And Chibi-Robo Ziplash was a terrible game. Man, this guy has the worst luck in the world. Maybe one day Chibi-Robo will have a successful game. I sure hope he does. But until then, his franchise is left forgotten. Banjo-Kazooie is a 3D platformer / collectathon series. You play as the bear, Banjo, and the bird, Kazooie. They work together to collect jiggies, notes, feathers, and other collectibles. These games are really good. Definitely some of the best 3D platformers I've ever played. They kind of reek of the 90s, but in a nice way. They just really encapsulate that era of mascot platformers from the 90s and 2000s. A lot of people like Banjo-Kazooie more than Super Mario 64. I don't personally think that, but it's a perfectly valid opinion. Most of the people that I hear talk about Banjo-Kazooie are the people who grew up playing it back in the 90s. I still think it's an excellent game. It's fantastic. It just feels a bit like a product of its era. So do you want to know why Nintendo forgot this franchise? It's because they're legally not allowed to remember. Gosh, that was a rough divorce. Yeah, Banjo-Kazooie was technically never owned by Nintendo. It was owned by the developer Rareware. Rare ended up getting bought out by Microsoft in 2001. So the Banjo-Kazooie franchise is a Microsoft-owned franchise now. But man, back when Rare worked with Nintendo, they made some great games. In fact, for a while, Rare was making some of the best and most defining games for Nintendo's consoles. I'll always associate the original Banjo-Kazooie with the N64, not the Xbox. On top of that, Nintendo fans give more of a shit than any Microsoft executive ever will. Banjo-Kazooie is a Nintendo franchise. Now of course, the Banjo-Kazooie series started with Banjo-Kazooie on the N64 back in 1998. Technically though, Banjo first appeared as a character in Diddy Kong Racing. See, Banjo and Diddy Kong are friends. That's another reason why it's a Nintendo franchise. Anyways, the most recent game in the series was Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts for the Xbox 360 in 2008. Nuts and Bolts went in a very different direction than the other Banjo games. The game is about racing and building cars rather than platforming and collecting. The developers did this because they were concerned that audiences wouldn't be interested in a 3D platformer anymore. But because of the change in direction, a lot of Banjo-Kazooie fans don't really like this game, and the series has never come back since. So Banjo-Kazooie was forgotten because Microsoft bought the IP, decided it didn't really fit their demographic, and never did anything with the franchise ever again. Honestly, I wish Nintendo would buy the Banjo-Kazooie IP off of Microsoft, because Microsoft clearly doesn't want it. And honestly, even if they did try to revive the Banjo-Kazooie series, I kinda don't trust them to do it right. See, I told you they forgot Mario. Mario sports games have had a really weird history. You could argue that the first Mario Sports was NES Open Tournament Golf, which featured several Mario characters. Nintendo expanded on this with Mario's Tennis on the Virtual Boy. But Nintendo gave Mario Sports another shot with Mario Tennis on the N64 and Game Boy Color. That game was pretty successful, so Nintendo started putting Mario into other sports like golf, soccer, basketball, and yes, baseball. The first Mario baseball game was Mario Superstar Baseball, which came out for the GameCube in 2005. And the only other Mario baseball game is Mario Super Sluggers, which came out for the Wii in 2008. I'm not gonna lie, I don't have a lick of experience with the Mario baseball series, but a lot of people have been asking for it to come back. And baseball is pretty cool, right?
Yeah! Woohoo! Yahoo!
So why did Mario Baseball get left behind when all the other Mario sports got new games? One guess I have is because of regional differences. You see, sports like golf and soccer are pretty popular around the entire world, but sports like basketball and baseball aren't really that popular outside of America and Japan. Oh, that explains why Mario Super Sluggers never came out in Europe. The European mind could never comprehend this. In addition to that, a lot of the Mario sports games since the Wii generation have had very mixed reception. Mario Golf World Tour was pretty good, but then there were just a barrage of mediocre and flat-out bad Mario sports games. So even if Nintendo does bring this franchise back, things aren't looking great for it. I Everyone has that one unemployed friend whose favorite Zelda character is Tingle. Well, you better give him a call because they made a whole franchise about this guy. Tingle was introduced as a character in The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. He's this 35-year-old man who wears a green tight suit and believes he's a fairy. And Nintendo decided this is the guy that deserves his own franchise. The first game in the Tingle series is freshly picked Tingle's Rosy Rupeeland, which released for the Nintendo DS in 2006, only in Europe and Japan. It's not clear what drove Nintendo to make such a masterpiece, but clearly it was a stroke of genius. In the game, Tingle is asked by an old man named Uncle Rupee to collect a bunch of rupees and feed them to a nearby spring to erect a tower so that Tingle can live out his days in the paradise known as Rupeeland. So yeah, the goal of the game is to collect rupees by beating up enemies and working with other characters. This game is very hard to describe because it's honestly not even comparable to any game I've ever seen before. Despite being connected to the Zelda franchise, it doesn't really have that much in common with any other Zelda game. After Rosy Rupeeland, Nintendo released Tingle's Balloon Fight on the DS in 2007. This game was only available in Japan as a Club Nintendo reward. It was never meant to be an original Tingle game though. It's essentially just a remake of the NES game Balloon Fight, but with Tingle. So you can't really compare it to Rosy Rupeeland. But it still counts as part of the series. Later, Nintendo released another Tingle game called Too Much Tingle Pack. Too Much Tingle? Yeah, you got that right. It's a Japan-only DSiWare game with a few mini-games. That's about it. Again, it's not really a full game, and it doesn't have much to do with the first Tingle game. But then, at long last, Nintendo released another Tingle game for the DS, called Ripened Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love in 2009. This is a full sequel to Tingle's Rosy Rupeeland, but instead it's a point-and-click adventure game instead of whatever the first game was. So, how many games was that? 4 games? Granted, 2 of them aren't meant to be taken as full original games, but still, why did they make 4 games? Why did they make 1 game?
What the f***?
There's basically no information about the development of these games, so at this point I'm just left to assume that they just appeared one day. I don't have a problem with these games, it just doesn't make any sense why they exist. Why does Tingle get 4 games in a row while Kid Icarus gets left in the dust? Well, Tingle got lucky 4 times in a row. I don't think this franchise is ever coming back. Pilotwings is a series where you partake in various air-based activities, like flying planes, hang gliders, or jetpacks, usually with some sort of objective you need to complete. For a while, I think Pilotwings was sort of meant to be a technical showcase game for Nintendo's consoles. The first Pilotwings was released at the launch of the Super Nintendo in 1990. It really showcased some of the 3D-esque graphics that the SNES could pull off. Then, Pilotwings 64 came out at the launch of the N64, and showed how that console had real 3D graphics. And then the series passed out for a while, and then randomly came back with Pilotwings Resort at the launch of the 3DS in 2011, and then it was never seen again. With this series, I think it died out because Nintendo didn't know how to iterate on the gameplay anymore. All the games play pretty similarly, and the main difference is honestly just the graphics. All the games are pretty fun though. Actually, they're kind of underrated if you ask me. It's very relaxing and fun to fly around in these games. I especially like Pilotwings Resort because you can complete missions, or you can freely explore Woohoo Island. Yeah, Woohoo Island, from Wii Sports Resort. Oh, that's why it's called Pilotwings Resort. Pilotwings is just such a chill game series. If Nintendo could come up with some more ideas for the franchise, then I'd love to see it come back. StarTropics is an action-adventure series that started with the original StarTropics on the NES back in 1990. It was only released in North America and Europe. That's because it was designed specifically for American tastes. The main character is named Mike Jones. What a patriot. Mike wields various American-related weapons like a yo-yo and a baseball bat. See, Dad, I told you baseball's cool. Mike must venture through several dungeons to find his missing uncle. Yeah, dungeons. That's just one of the many parallels between it and the first two Legend of Zelda games. The most recent StarTropics game is Zoda's Revenge StarTropics 2, which came out in 1994, also for the NES. Oops, StarTropics only got 2 games. But despite that, StarTropics has developed a passionate cult following, kinda similar to the Earthbound/Mother series. As for what I think of StarTropics, it's alright. I like the aesthetic and the overall vibe of the game, but I don't think the gameplay has aged that well. Like the original Zelda, it's just a bit hard to go back to, especially without a guide. On top of that, this game is hard as f***. I guess that's all to be expected with a 35-year-old NES game. But still, even though I'm not a huge fan of this franchise, I'd love to see it come back. Perhaps with a remake of the first game, or even a brand new game. StarTropics is just a really special piece of Nintendo history, and it would be so cool to see it come back. No, that's Twitter. Yes, the game series, X. No, I didn't make that up. It was a real game series. There it is, thank you. X is a game series where you fly a spaceship through various stages, shooting enemies and avoiding obstacles. Sound familiar? Yeah, X served as the foundation for the Star Fox series, which is a whole nother forgotten franchise, but that's a story for another time. X barely counts as a game franchise since there's only 2 games in the series, and neither of them are very easily accessible, but the fact that there's 2 games allows me to shove it in this video. There's X, which released on the Game Boy in 1992, only in Japan. Unlike other space shooter games at the time, X takes place from a first-person perspective. Because of this, the game takes place in a 3D space. Wait, a 3D game for the Game Boy? There's a 3D game on this brick of a system? That's insane! That said, this game looks horrendous to actually play. I haven't played it for myself since it's a Japan-only game, but based on the footage I got, it looks pretty rough. Later on, X got a sequel with Xscape, released as a DSiWare game in 2010 worldwide. It sort of mimics the primitive graphics of the original game, but it's slightly more bearable. I actually do have Xscape on my 3DS. It's a neat little game, so I can't complain. The main reason I included this game series is because of how obscure it is. I bet most of you didn't even know what an X was until I told you about it in this video. I think it would be very funny if Nintendo brought such a wildly obscure franchise back. Realistically, I have no idea how they'd go about doing that, but who cares, it's funny. This video was a bit difficult to write because there were several times where I thought Nintendo had forgotten a franchise, only to realize that they actually brought it back pretty recently. Even though the franchises I discussed in this video haven't had new entries in a long time, they're still alive in some way. A lot of the games I referenced in this video are available on Nintendo Switch Online. Nintendo made F-Zero 99 a few years ago. Banjo and Kazooie are in Smash. Tingle was found dead in an apartment in Miami. But all the franchises I mentioned in this video still have a chance of coming back. My Metroid Prime! See, don't lose hope. These franchises may be forgotten, but they're certainly not dead. They just need to be remembered. Like how I just remembered that I left my oven on yesterday. Looks like I'm about to become a dead franchise.